Jerry Wills. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Folks, it's great to be back. I was in Facebook jail for 3 weeks. Same time the Eagles had won the Super Bowl. It was kind of sucked to be off when those things were going on, and wasn't able to put a lot of stuff on Facebook. But I kept up with my research and everything, and I saw Jerry Wills on, don't remember the YouTube channel, but it was one of those Gaia interviews. This one was the one about the Grand Canyon, and there's a couple of others that you've done that I've listened to. And well, first of all, I want you to introduce yourself, primary source perspective, who you are and what caused you to do the stuff that you do. And then after that, we will get into some nitty-gritty subjects, maybe the Grand Canyon one first, because that's the freshest one that's on my mind based on what I saw regarding what you've done. And I've got all three of your sites up here that I can use as a guide. And I'll make sure I upload the link to all those sites when I upload this to YouTube. Also upload it to Cos.tv. I do have a Patreon page, but it's been a while. I haven't been able to do as many shows as I used to back in the day, and because of that, I haven't really done any pay-per-view sections on my show. So I guess this whole one will be free for everybody, start to finish. Will I ever go back to Patreon? I don't know. I haven't really had much success with that because every time I get going, something happens that slows me down a bit. But anyway, enough of me. I want you to introduce yourself. We want to know about you, who you are, what did you experience. There's a lot of things you've experienced, but regarding the stuff that caused you to get in the possession you are now, that's important. Set the stage. So knock yourself out. You got the floor.
Hello, everyone. And hello, Andrew. Thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. It's quite a privilege to be here. As far as about myself, well, I mean, there's a lot to cover on that subject. I grew up back in the hills of Kentucky on a tobacco farm. This was back in the mid-'60s when I started having experiences with sightings and extraterrestrial encounters. And from there, it just progressed on. It went on for a number of years. And past that point, just went out into the world like most people do. Eventually, my hunger for adventure and trying to explain things that didn't seem to have answers took me down to South America and other parts of the world. And it was in the 2000s that my wife Kathy and I had come across some information about the Grand Canyon. Most people thought that this was just a bunch of hooey, that there wasn't anything to it, because there was a newspaper article that referenced a previous newspaper article, but there was no way to find that other one. We were looking for it. We couldn't find it. So Kathy, she's quite a researcher. She set about looking in archives and, personal archives that people had. And eventually she did come across the other article. So that put us in a position to where we decided we would go and take a look for ourselves to see what was actually factual about this. Was there something there? Is this a real story? Is this something that happened? We spent the next 3.5 to 4 years looking in a few different areas of the Grand Canyon, settled on one, and that's when some of the high strangeness started happening. We eventually did get enough information to where we knew where the entrance to this underground city was, but it was roughly 2,800 feet below the surface of where we were standing there on the edge of the Grand Canyon, and about 1,800 feet up from the floor of the Grand Canyon. So it was, a hell of a thing. And eventually we tried to send a team over, but the team didn't make it. They only got down, 800 feet or so. And we had not calculated that, it was pretty warm where we were standing. But when you go over the edge and start going down, the rocks are irradiating the heat, and it's still hot. So the farther you go, the hotter it becomes. and they ran into some trouble. It took about 11 hours to get them up from their, where they had ended up. One guy was at the end of a rope, just dangling over the Grand Canyon, dangling about 100 feet with nothing below him. So after 11 hours, we did manage to get them back up, get them rehydrated. Everybody was exhausted. And we pretty much at that point concluded our expedition at the Grand Canyon. We'd gathered enough evidence to support that there was something there, that it was impossible to get to. And that's kind of where we left it.
Now, thank you. Now, Grand Canyon, Teddy Roosevelt said every American should see it. Well, love-hate attitude with that president. Donald, well, I shouldn't say his name, but he seems to support the legacy of Roosevelt, although Roosevelt, a lot of domestic imperialism with what he did, not really constitutional, but he seemed to think the Grand Canyon, everybody should see it. It's a fascinating place. The Electric Universe people say that canyon was, if you believe the bullshit idea of the Colorado River putting that on the Earth, yeah, right. It was more likely electrical discharge, giant lightning bolts, that caused that canyon to form when the Earth was near some other planet, Mars maybe. But the idea that there's ancient Egyptian artifacts in the Grand Canyon, I mean, do they actually look ancient Egyptian? And if they do, then, well, so hold a can of worms regarding planetary civilization. But how many sites, the one that you're talking about, and you talked about in the interview on Gaia, is that the only site in the Grand Canyon where people claim to have found what appear to be ancient Egyptian artifacts?
Well, let's examine the Egyptian aspect of it, because Kathy turned up a lot more evidence. You see, at the time that this was going on in the early 1900s, there was in Egypt, discovery of King Tut, his tomb, and a lot of other things going on in Egypt. Egypt was pretty much the cliche for everything. If it was not understandable, it must just be Egyptian. They even named several areas in the Grand Canyon with Egyptian names. That doesn't mean it was Egyptian, but it doesn't mean it wasn't either. But what research has shown, from what Kathy has uncovered, is that actually a much larger story is involved here. Now, the Egyptians might have been there. We have no way of knowing that for sure. But if you recall, on the inside of the canyon, or inside of the cave rather, they said they found something that looked like a huge statue of Buddha. Now, the Egyptians didn't have anything like Buddha. They had Horus and the other deities of the Egyptian iconography. But a large figure of Buddha. Well, her research turned up a story from way back in history, and this comes from Asia and probably China, that there used to be a pilgrimage from Asia to the Grand Canyon. And at the time, there was a huge natural dam that had blocked off the canyon. This had been caused by two volcanoes, one on either side of the canyon. And that had made like a natural dam. And that natural dam was roughly 1,800 feet tall. Now, these Asians had come from their home and had traveled up the Sea of Cortez, up the Colorado River. Their pilgrimage took them to a place they called the Canyon of Light. And they were there to see the child of the sun. Now, as we understand it, from all that we've been able to determine, this was Asiatic, Eastern, let's say, just Eastern philosophy that was involved with this. We don't know who specifically. I think those details would be fascinating to uncover. But there came a point where there was an earthquake, and the earthquake destroyed that natural dam. At that place where it existed rather, now there's just rubble that got washed down the Colorado River. That is the rapids called Quagget Falls. And that's what's left of this immense natural dam that had once been there. Well, when this happened, the people basically had no way to get to the water. They were too far above the water. They did have entrances on the surface, and they then went inside the surface, went up to the top, and just went wherever they wanted to go, I suppose. The story shows that they went down to a place in central Arizona that is, in kind of ancient history. There's quite a settlement there. And south of Casa Grande is the name of the area now we're talking about. And south of there in Tucson, there were mighty rivers flowing. You had the Gila River. It was immense. And you had the San Pedro River. It was also immense. And of course, the Colorado River, even larger. Through our investigation, a lot attributed to Kathy, we have come to find out that there were 3.5–4 million people in the Tucson area. And the person who left there, who was the somewhat, let's call it a deity, who left the Grand Canyon, his mother took him to Casa Grande, and this is where Casa Grande settlement was established. And then north of theirs, when the canals were being built, and that entire area there's a lot more water there than there is now. People look at it now and think it's just a dried up desert. But back at the time, it wasn't. The Gila River was flowing like the Missouri River, for example. It was huge. So you had all kinds of farming taking place in the Phoenix area, all the way down past Casa Grande. And in the Tucson area, you had an entirely different, aside from just crops, they were mining down there. And at this time, as a result of things that have been found, we know without any doubt at all that the Phoenicians were there. A lot of people from the Middle East came there, and a lot of people from Asia came there, and people from India went there. The Hohokam, not Hohokam, but the O'odham Indians are basically the ancestors of a dirty caste of folks from India who were there to do mining. And evidence of this mining remains to this day. And a lot of other really strange and fascinating things that are out there in this desert that's now just, it's so hot, it's so dry, it's unlivable. But at one time it wasn't. There was an earthquake, you see. And the earthquake caused the San Pedro River to be diverted underground. And it remains underground. We're right here on top of it. It's about, the top part is about 650 feet below the surface, and it goes much deeper. In this area, if you could take a look, you would see that it's very obvious there was a gigantic river here that was running. Now, you see the San Pedro and the Gila River, they were going southward, of course, but not in a direct line. But there was also another channel, which also dried up, by the way, and that channel went from the Colorado River eastward to the Rio Grande. Met up with the Rio Puerco and then met up with the Rio Grande. And that was their east-west navigation, so theoretically, probably not much of a theory, it's pretty much factually, they would be able to go to the Gulf of America and go across on this river and jump from one river to another, get over to the Colorado River and go north, or vice versa. And they could also travel a great distance inland using the same technique. Now, Kathy and I, we went investigating a place called the Decalogue Stone. This is in New Mexico. And for folks who are interested, just look it up. Decalogue, Decalogue Stone. Now, this is a stone of granite that sits at the bottom of a plateau, quite large. It is fine. Well, it was. People have been screwing with it over the past 25 years, but when we saw it, it was a finely polished, very high finish polish on this granite stone. And emblazoned upon this stone was a language that no one could read until the 60s. It was first shown to pioneers going westward to California during the California Gold Rush in the 1800s. So this stone has the Ten Commandments written upon it, but it's in First Hebrew, a language that wasn't known until the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So at that point, what you have is a really rare artifact. But on top of that, if that wasn't enough, there's another one nearby, and it has a star chart and a commemoration date, which you can check. The commemoration is to King Solomon, and it gives a date, and the date corresponds with biblical information. So, it wasn't just, from the Middle East or Asia. I mean, so many different cultures were coming through here. The Phoenicians were crazy about going all over the world and trading. And that's why they went down into went up, I should say, into the Tucson area. You see, that's where you get gold, silver, copper, turquoise, tin, all of that, lead. It's all there. And it's in a string from the Colorado River, which is where you find Yuma. These ancient mines are in a string all the way from Yuma, all the way back to Tucson. And then they spread out from there, east, west, north, south, the compass rose. This place was inhabited by a great many people. But when that river went underground and all those things happened, they had to leave because it was impossible to live here.
Thank you. Now, have you spoken to the Native Americans in the area to get some answers about what was going on with that stuff? And can they? You would think that they're probably the best source out there. But then again, if they were maybe they were brainwashed by spirits into thinking things that were lies. I don't know. But when it comes to religion, some of the you have to take it with a grain of salt because religion involves brainwashing, and if some of their stories are based on some religious faith rather than historical note.
Sure.
Got to be a little more careful with it. But in general, have the Native Americans said anything about it if you've tried to ask them anything about it?
I don't think that we have in particular. I mean, we did have some lengthy conversations with some friends of ours who were on the Hopi Reservation. We've had numerous conversations with Native Americans in the Hopi and Navajo nations, and some with the Apaches. And, they do have an oral history. It goes back a ways, but it doesn't go back as far as what we're talking about. And maybe they just were inhibited to talk about it. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. They did have some information, but it wasn't as comprehensive as we had hoped for. But we do have a fellow, his name was Gene Matlock. I think he's deceased now. He was a scientist, linguist, archaeologist, quite an explorer. What he did is he went down to the O'odham, Tohono reservation, the O'odham, and he got some blood samples from them, because he's trying to figure out ancient civilizations like us. So what he did is got the blood samples, and he had it tested genetically to find out what their heritage is. Kind of like 23andMe or something like that, I suppose. What he found out was that they were from India. So then he started comparing their language. And their language for things that are in Hindi were slightly different, because over time you would imagine that would happen. But the same word for snake or butterfly, that sort of thing, they were so absolutely spot on. So he proved genetically and through linguistics that these people were from India. The world, by far, has not paid any attention to his discoveries or his findings, but it helped us to understand more about the cultures that were here. You know, the Romans apparently were even here, because there were Roman swords and tablets that were discovered in the Tucson area, outside of Tucson, an area called Silver Bell Road, which goes towards Yuma, and it's an old trail that everyone used back in ancient times. Well, they found a cache of Roman swords and some other items that had been, inscribed, talking about a fantastic battle that they had and barely won against the savages who lived in the area. Later, these savages would become known as Apaches. So, a lot of strange things have gone on here. And, you take a look at the Grand Canyon, it's not enough to presume that, the Egyptians might have gone up there and done something. It's a much, much larger story than that. There was world travel, and these people had no problem at all going from all the way on the other side of the world and coming here, because there were things here that they could get and trade with elsewhere that the people in the other parts of the world didn't have access to. And of course, there were things here that the folks here didn't have access to, and that's what the Phoenicians were very well known for. We know the Chinese were here. They had a very large mission. I'm not even sure how to explain how large it was, but they sent people out all the way from the Arctic Circle down to the tip of South America. Groups of men and women too, I suppose. Their idea was they wanted to be able to measure longitude and latitude. They're very advanced with mathematics, and they wanted to figure this out. So you've got a tower, Tovria Tower at the Grand Canyon, that is a remnant of one of these things they had made. You also have similar items all the way from the Arctic Circle down south to into Ecuador. And when you take a look at some of the ancient sites like we have in South America, in Ecuador, you had a very well-established trade route. The Asians, the Asiatics, they wanted some of the stones. What is the green stone? I can't think the name of it at the moment. It's not turquoise. Jade. They went over and they had a huge jade trade. This is a sacred stone to them. They went to great lengths to get it. Meanwhile, and simultaneously, you had the Phoenicians who would go up to the Isthmus of Mexico, in other words, a smaller area to cross, with these gigantic ships. There were plenty of workers, and they would dismantle the ships and pull them across to the other side, reassemble them, put them back in the water, and they were going after the Aspondylus shells. You see, Aspondylus shells that are below 300 feet in depth, they turn purple. And when you process these shells, you get a color, a dye from the shells that's called royal blue. And this is what the Egyptians loved. They had already farmed in excess their asparagus shells over in the Mediterranean and in those areas. Um, so they had to have it. So the Phoenicians saw the opportunity. They came over here. They had huge city factories that were working, and they brought people over. They lived in South America, in Ecuador and Peru. We found evidence of this in Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and they had the obligation to get these shells and make this dye, but they also had rare items, different birds, different plants, different fruits, different things that you would never find on the other side of the world. The Phoenicians loved this. They even had fully grown trees that they would put on these ships. These ships were huge. And they would sail back and take it back to their customers, basically. And we found evidence of this. We've seen it. We've walked on the mountains of asparagus shells in northern Peru. We've seen evidence of this, all over South America. So the one thing that people would wonder is like, okay, well, what happened? Well, quite simply, in a thumbnail sketch, a volcano went off. And it went off, and I don't remember which one it was right now, but it went off and it put soot and ash into the atmosphere. Well, the Phoenicians, they sailed by the stars. And when you can't see the stars, you can't figure out which way you're going. And so they had to stop. And the Phoenicians, this went on for years. It wasn't a few months thing. It went on for years. And as a result of this, they started losing money and losing power because they were one of the most powerful fleets in the world at the time.
Before you continue, can you give maybe a year one so people can research and find out what eruption this was, maybe what year it was, and people can see what kind of
I don't
eruptions happened
remember.
that time?
I don't remember what year it was.
Oh. All right. Well, continue.
But if you want to look into it, it's really easy to figure out. What year were the Phoenicians conquered by Rome? And then take that back 15 years, and you're pretty much spot on to the time I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for getting into some of that stuff in South America as well. Definitely a lot of lies about what was really going on regarding global travel and commerce in antiquity. Now, there were a couple of really disturbing incidents that happened when you guys were trying to get into the Grand Canyon area. There appeared to be some spiritual beings of some sort that like appeared out of nowhere on a canyon top or something, and like didn't say anything. They didn't say anything to you guys, but they were basically there saying, "Please don't continue. This is not in your best interest. You're going to have bad luck if you do." And I believe, even though you said in that guy interview that you didn't get any, like from the government didn't threaten you or anything, someone called you and threatened you with prison if you continued. Could you please get into both those subjects? Because obviously, if you're getting threatened or warned, you're on the right track, and I think people should listen to you more often if these things are happening, even though they're pretty disturbing things that happen to you. So, what was going on there?
Well, it's a couple different stories. The one about getting in trouble legally, it had to do with our work with Robert Three Eagles, who had grown up in Utah, southern Utah. And as a young man, this is back in the 40s because he's gone now, but he was quite old when he was our friend. Anyway, they had found burials. They thought, oh, let's dig up Indian burials. It was a thing, I suppose, back then. Well, they found some that had giant skeletons in them. These people were 9 to 12 foot tall, double rows of teeth, black and red hair. and really just monstrosities, huge skulls. They obviously were giants. There's no way about it. This is a Mormon area, so they figured that these were descendants of Gilgamesh or who knows what. It was a little bit of a put off to the elders, and they put it all back and buried it up again. Well, now he's an older man, and we're talking, and he's also telling us about stuff around the Grand Canyon, a place called Marble Canyon, which is an offshoot from the Grand Canyon. And this is where the giants lived. And this corresponded exactly with what I had been told by the Hopi elders. They had great stories about this. So I just mentioned, geez, if we could just get, like a molar or a good sample of hair, we could probably do a DNA test and figure out what the deal is with these folks, because no one's ever done that. So it went to the next level, and he decided he was going to take us where a giant is buried. He knew exactly where it was. He said one of them was a black man, and the other one, he didn't know. It wasn't a black man. It was a white man, I guess, of some sort. And he was going to, with red hair. The black man had black hair. And so we were going to get hair samples from both of these and see what we could find out about them. And it was moving along just swimmingly. And I was putting it out to our subscribers and on our email list. And this is what's going on. Hell, I figured this is a big deal and people would like to know about it. Well, the wrong people decided, I guess wrong people, they don't want this sort of thing known. So consequently, we were going to leave like on a Saturday morning, I think, to go up there and meet up with him and then go directly to the site and, get these materials. Well, got a phone call, like 9 o'clock on a Friday night, which is unusual. And didn't identify himself, but gave me a pretty stern warning that if we attempted to do such a thing, that it was a $25,000 fine and 25 years in prison. And, we would be considered pot hunters and, severe penalties and all that. Just a word to the wise, he said. Click. So we said, to hell with it. Whatever it is isn't worth that kind of a price. I mean, everything's got a price. And, that was just too steep of a price to pay for anything. So we said, to hell with it. We told Robert to hell with it. We called him up. He says, well, you're not the only one. He says, they came and saw me. And they told me that I better essentially just knock it off and stop even thinking about such a thing. And by the way, where are they? And he wouldn't tell them. And they eventually left, and they kept an eye on him, for a while. And then when he just refused to go any farther with it, it wasn't until, I don't know, just a few years ago, before he passed away, I said, we're not going to do any excavating, nothing like that, but I'd really like to see where this was. And he said he'd show us. So we put together a team, and we went out with him into the backwaters of Utah. And holy hell, we got there, and I've never seen anything like it. It was just amazing. There were these huge round holes burrowed directly into the stone and then filled in with sand. And there was a wall 300 foot long by 50 foot tall that just was nothing but red ochre and just all this panorama. There was, and who knows how they even got up there to do it. I mean, you'd be a giant, it'd still be above your ability to reach it. But there it was. So we produced a video about it. It's called Expedition, or the Utah Expedition, and it's at jerrywillsshow.com in the $15 membership level. And, You can just watch that and see it from beginning to end, really. It was a hell of a thing. And getting out of that canyon it was tough. Then we got lost, and then we figured out where we were. It took a while. As far as the other question, now I don't remember what the other question was. Tell me again.
Yeah, something about spiritual entities appeared on top of a hill or a canyon ridge, and you think they were there as a way of saying, please don't do this any further, or bad luck will come to you. Do you remember that?
Well, yeah, I do. We were the Grand
Yeah.
Canyon, and our team was there, and we had a pretty good team assembled across a variety of disciplines. This particular night, there was uh, there was a storm. We were in between actually two quite violent storms. The wind was blowing. It was just incredible. It blew so hard the tents went flat upon us. We just didn't know what to do. I mean, we eventually got into the vehicles to try, and the vehicles just rocking like crazy. But before the storm hit us, lightning was off in the distance. And when you're standing on the Grand Canyon, it's kind of like just, kind of flat, really. I mean, it rises and it goes down, up and down, but it's over a very large distance. So at the farthest distance, at the highest point from us, lightning was flashing, and it was flashing a lot. And in the distance, there were these tall beings. There were three of them. And they looked like, it looked like um, three gigantic people. I mean, you couldn't tell much about it because the lightning flashes and you see it and it's gone. And it flashes again, and they're a little bit closer, and then it's gone. Then it flashes again, and you don't see them. And then it flashes again, and there they are at the same place they were before. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was visceral. And you could see this very, very clearly. And then they were just gone. And I don't know that it was actually a warning. I feel like it was just someone was watching. And when I talked to the Hopi elders about it, they said that they thought that it was, what was the name? Masa or something? It's the great god of the Hopis, Masa, I think is what they called it. And he said, what you want to look for, if that's the case, is a spiral in the sand, a large spiral in the sand, because that is the sign of Masa. Well, we had seen this the next day, and we're just marveling. It wasn't there before, and it wasn't as big as a car. It was probably 3 foot across, because we went looking to see, what was out there. And sure enough, there was this spiral. And when we were told by this one fellow, he's a good friend of mine, actually. I think he's passed away now, his grandfather, David. And he told me that, if you see this is the sign that Masa was there. And I said, well, yeah, we saw it. And he says, you really shouldn't try to go into that city in the Grand Canyon. We know about it. We're well aware of it. We won't ever go there because it's the city of the dead, and you don't disturb the dead. He says it would probably be dangerous because they wouldn't welcome you. And of course, we never got into the cave, so we never had that encounter in that respect, with any beings in the cave. But damn, we got close. Several years later, I did a show with Scott Walter on America Unearthed, and we took a helicopter and flew over there, and we were going to try to see the entrance from the air. And I did manage to see, once I got my bearings, because when you're in the air, things look so much differently. But I had a chance to take a look. She said the gal flying it slowed down. I could take a look. in front of the entrance, there is a pyramid-shaped rock. It's just a big triangular rock. It's not really pyramid, triangular. And it's right in front of the cave entrance, and you would never see it because it blends in with everything else. You remember that Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail, when he was going to step out onto he had to take the leap of faith and step out, and he did. He hit solid ground. From another perspective, you could see it was just a stone bridge, but the way it had been put together in the movie, it just looked like you were looking into the abyss. So he grabbed some sand, threw it on there, and sure enough, there it was. Well, this is the same sort of thing, except you're not going to throw any sand on it. But it's right there in front of the entrance, and it camouflages the entrance perfectly. Unless you know where to look, you won't see it. So that's what that was all about.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very interesting. Yeah, to remember that scene from Indiana Jones. Uh, I didn't realize that was actually something that they actually mimic in real life. The ability to make it seem like there's nothing there, and then there's a bridge there. That there are real things like that. Well,
Oh, we've
that
seen
was
things
interesting.
like that in South America for sure.
Oh,
This isn't just a movie-esque kind of thing. This is a real thing, and the way they disguise and hide things, you can be standing right on top of something, and if you don't know how they did these things, well, hell, you just walk right on past it. But once you get an education on how they did these, how they obscured, then at that point it's like, okay, I know what to look for. You don't always find it because it's not always there. But in those instances where you do find it, you feel somewhat redeemed because you know something no one else knew, and you found something no one else has ever been able to find. And that happened for us a lot in South America. We found all kinds of things. Most of the stuff we never, we talk about, but we never give locations, just the details of what we found, but never, specific locations and how you would get there and so forth, because, people like to think there are treasures. Well, they're thinking correctly. There are. And I've seen enough jewels and gold and artifacts that could make, a creepy, illicit person a lot of money. And there are those creepy, illicit people who've gone in and found things, and they've got made a lot of money, but this doesn't belong to us and we're not going to touch it.
all right. Getting back to South America, one of your sites here. I didn't realize again that was you were the Jerry Wills on that site because I don't see any pictures of you. There's just that image with the black and white image with the sun shining on you. I guess that was in Bolivia. You said. Um,
Yes.
Interesting thing about Bolivia. I remember David Icke writing in one of his books. He remembers when he was traveling from Peru to Bolivia, it felt like a ton of bricks hit him. Peru seems to be heart centered, he said. Bolivia is solar plexus centered, and you could feel the drop in consciousness when you go from Peru to Bolivia. But when you do the opposite, when you get to Peru from Bolivia, you instantly feel more heart centered. Do you, by any chance, have you had a feeling like that? Have you ever traveled between Peru and Bolivia and had a feeling like a heart to solar plexus and vice versa?
Well, we lived in Peru a few times for very lengthy periods of time while we were looking for lost cities. I understand what David's talking about there. There's a difference in the vibe. I tell folks that Bolivia is it's a fourth world country. It's not a third world country. Peru is a third world country. You find good people wherever you go, but there is a difference in the vibe of the place, and I wouldn't say that it's a difference that is not good or something like this, because after all, going all over Bolivia, going all over Peru, um, you run into good and bad areas wherever you go. It isn't like there's, Peru is just solid hard area. It's not. There's some places in Peru that are just, you know, how shall I put it? You wouldn't want to go there. We've gone there and, found out the bad people are bad people after all. We've been chased by death squads. We've been surrounded by people with machine guns threatening us, both in Peru and Bolivia. We've had to run for our lives a few times, in the mountains and the jungles. So, it's on the surface, I mean, if you're skimming the surface, then maybe, heart center here, you know, a different area over there. But when you dig down and get down into the nitty gritty of it, you still find there's a difference, but the differences are going to be, um, they're going to be just like trying to find a vortex. You just go here, go there. Finally, there's one, and it's this kind of vortex. You go here, go there. Oh, there's another one. It's not quite as strong. It's another kind of vortex. I guess it's really whatever trips your trigger. The things we found in Bolivia, just defy explanation. We understand now what happened there. And we understand, you were talking about the Grand Canyon as well. We understand what happened with the Grand Canyon too. Um, thunderbolts of the gods, water. What was it? Well, it's pretty simple. The earth tore apart. And it tore apart a long time ago. Probably don't have time to get into the intrinsic details on this, but thumbnail sketch, about every 12,000 years, the earth goes through a cycle. And this cycle is quite severe, and the earth will roll over on its side. This time it's going to happen. It's going to be rolling over such that the Atlantic is going to be flooding in over the Appalachians, and Gulf of America rising up, and the water will leave the Great Lakes, and then it'll slosh back and back and forth, back and forth. The Eye of Africa is evidence of that, but you also have Stonewall, Texas, where a massive city with gigantic stone walls is buried under 30 feet of silt, and that silt is no different than Tiwanaku at 13,000 feet, buried in silt, because the last time it happened in such a way that it rocked back, and when it rocked back, the Pacific Ocean came up. And you look at the landscape of South America, and what you see is a desert where the Pacific Ocean went right over, all the way up to and beyond the Andes. And we found artifacts and information that tell us the story about this. It's called the Doomsday Stone. But this is why you find, the largest whales on Earth, sperm whales, they are lodged up on the peaks of the Andes at 15,000 feet. That's in Bolivia and Chile. You find all kind of marine life, actually. There remains up in these higher elevations. And this time when the Earth does it, it'll roll over and the Atlantic will come over. And then 10,000 years from now, people will think that what we call South America will be the South Pole. So you can do a little bit of adjustment, mentally there to figure out where the North Pole is. The equator will be at a different place. And then another 12,000 years goes by, the Earth moves again, and it goes the other direction. It rights itself, and now the North Pole's back sort of where it is now. But this is a 12,000 round numbers, 12,000 year cycle. And we're not far from this happening again, probably within the next 100 years, I'm guessing, but I have no idea really.
Well, hold on a minute here. Okay, first of all, sorry, just for the people that don't want to cherry pick, you said sperm whales are the biggest whales. Don't you mean blue whales? Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
guess
think it's
blue
blue whales.
whales.
Yeah, right. But a blue whale's almost never seen. So, but anyway,
Well, they have sperm
the
whales up on the side of the Andes because we saw
yeah,
the remains of them up there, and the archaeologists or anthropologists told they were sperm whales.
yeah, I like whales. So, but anyhow, Regarding the timeline that you're talking about, the 13,000, you say 12,000, I think it's more like 13,000 years. So I remember around the 2012 period, I was a big 2012 fanatic. In fact, I used the username fan of 2012 for almost everything. And that was about the 13,000 year cycle. The alignment between it's not the galactic line where the Earth, Sun, and the center of the Milky Way galaxy align. That's every 26,000 years. There's another cycle that happens every like 12,900 years, where there's a great cross between the angles in the equinoxes, and also on the ground, the mundane cross, the equator, and some other line I'm drawing a blank on. And it's that alignment between the cross on the ground and the cross in the sky happens every 13,000 years. And there was a horrible catastrophe 13,000 years ago. And you say every 13,000 years there's a disaster. Well, those in the consciousness metaphysical community would say we're on a positive timeline now. So we're not actually going to have those great cataclysms that you're referring to. What would you say? It's more of a consciousness factor regarding how devastating the cycle would actually be. I've heard people say the climate of the Earth is actually dependent on human consciousness to a great extent. So we're not going to enter ice ages like some people have said that we are, because our consciousness has the ability to change that. And any comments on that?
Well, yeah, a few. If the Buford Gyre happens to slow down to a point where it stops, this is the warm water convection coming from south to north. It's what keeps Europe, northern parts of Europe, from just becoming completely frozen over. That slows down and stops as a result of a very complex system the Earth has for itself. But when the fresh water from the ice melts, it mixes with the salty water, and it interferes with this flow of water that's warm coming up from the equator, from the Gulf of Mexico, more specifically, or Gulf of America now. But the climate is intrinsically linked to what's happening with the sun. And the other part of this is that while, and I'm on board with the idea that consciousness can alter things, because I do it all the time. And I know how powerful it is for manifestation to occur. Well, I think that these ages, and there's scientific proof, it isn't conjecture. I mean, there's scientific evidence that these ages have happened over and over and over and over and over again. It isn't like, oh, it's something that's going to happen a couple times and it's done. But you see, the crossing you're talking about, more importantly, what's happening is that the Earth is going around the sun, and the sun is going through a region of space where there's a band of dust. And this dust, it's a ripple. And the ripples from one to the other are about 12,000 years, round numbers. This dust is being pushed out from the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And what occurs is that the dust accumulates around the sun. The sun pulls it in. And as this happens, the molecular aspect of the sun, it becomes more organized towards helium, which has been measured. This also causes a change in the sun. This change that's occurring is not just dust, but it's electromagnetic, because it's a large cycle, 12,000 roughly year cycle of electromagnetic wave that is moving outward from the center of the galaxy. And this is going to cause changes with everything that it touches. And at this point, what we have recorded incredible changes on stars between us and the center of the Milky Way galaxy. They have gone nova, micronova typically, but some have gone nova. I mean, you might remember they were watching one star. What was the name of that star? It had dimmed down, and then it got like dim, then it came back bright again. I've forgotten the name of it. But the stars between us and out there towards the center of the Milky Way galaxy, they are in progression going through these changes. It's happening with our sun as well. Now, these electromagnetic influences are very, very powerful. And what they're doing is they're causing changes on all the planets in our solar system, including the Earth, which means that these planets have more energy that's coming into them. And in one case, I forgot if it's Neptune or Uranus, but it actually flipped its orbit, not its orbit, but its rotation. And you see changes on Jupiter and Saturn, and all the planets are showing changes, including the Earth. And as the Earth is compelled by induction to heat up, it's not about consciousness. It's about a physical aspect of things happening. But as the Earth heats up, now you have the climate changing. And as the climate warms, as the Earth warms, really, you see much different climatic issues that are taking place. Hurricanes getting much larger, weather cycles becoming much more strange. But you also find that the ice that is supposed to be at like the North Pole area, that this ice is melting. And it's going to interfere with the Beaufort Gyre. And that's going to cause the planet to self-regulate so that if it's getting too hot, it's going to slow down the Beaufort Gyre. It's going to cause the temperatures to decrease. In aspect of how consciousness can affect this, I think the Earth has gone through this many times. And I believe the times that it's gone through this, it was always a challenge for the people here, more than just a physical challenge. I think that what you have is an opportunity to expand and become more connected to your let's call it your spiritual nature. People have great power within them. And I've shown people how to access that, here and there, never on a grandiose scale. But let's take, for example, if you've seen people that can just bend a spoon, Uri Geller, focuses on a watch and says, okay, folks, focus on the watch, and the watches start ticking. I work on a person that has a terrible, terrible terminal illness, cancer or something else. I focus on them. The illness goes away. And it's not just me, and it's not just Uri Geller, and there are others out there who are also very talented. This is something that belongs to all people. Now imagine if you had 1,000 people who all were quite well versed in bending a spoon, just that simple. But what if they decided they would focus on a different outcome? Might it happen? Well, it could. But I think the planet is giving us an opportunity to grow, quote unquote, spiritually, to evolve, and to become the aspect of God that walks in the flesh. That we have control over our environment, over the cosmos. We have the ability to say, this isn't going to be necessary any longer because we've already evolved and gone beyond the need for needing to just have it wiped off and start over again. And that's what's happened in the past. People talk about Atlantis. It was much wider ranging than that. By the time this last event happened, and there's enough evidence out there, both anecdotal and absolute scientific proof, there's enough evidence showing that there was probably 5% of the people that were left alive after this event. And people had to start. It took 6,000 years to get to a point to where people were coming together again and making towns and cities and figuring out deities and writing and all of this. And it took another, well, 5,000 years to get to the point where we can talk to our computer and we can do things like we're doing right now with this interview. That can just go away. And it then takes time to come back again. And I think that this is a natural cycle that's put in place so that if we don't evolve, if we don't get it to the point to where we actually are the keepers of the garden, not metaphorically, but in particularly, then we don't have control over these things. It takes a deep understanding, but it also takes great wisdom to be able to achieve this. And there are plenty of teachers who have been here and who are here now. But people have to get rid of the illusion of who they think they are and come to a realization of who they actually are. And when this sort of revelation occurs to them, it isn't crowds of people suddenly waking up. It's one person waking up and helping the next person wake up. And it gets to a point to where people are going, I see through the illusion. I understand now. You see, everyone has a vision of what God is. They all have their own unique idea. They have their own unique word. And they have their own unique way of praying and worshiping however they do it. But the real bottom line to it is that if you look in a mirror and you do this and look into your own eyes and tell yourself, God lives here first. Because God is here. And that's what the name Tiwanaku actually means in that ancient language. God is here. Well, if you can do that and start evolving as a result of realizing that where you end and God begins is impossible to determine. You're homogeneous. It's like putting ink in water. It's homogeneous. You can't tell one from the other at that point, and never to be separated. But you get to the point where you understand that God isn't out there somewhere. God is here. And you're no longer looking for the light, because at that point you realize you are the light. And you're no longer trying to protect yourself from something, because God's here and everything comes from God. What is there to protect yourself from? So as far as these cataclysms go, the ancients knew that they were coming and they prepared for them. There's evidence of that all over the world. And I don't know if the people now are that well aware of it, but I think if it should start to show itself, you see, the Earth's magnetic field has gone down quite low. That in itself is evidence that something's about to happen. Have you ever heard of seeing the aurora in Mexico? And yet now it's happened several times in 2024. We watched in Nebraska the light in the sky dancing from the aurora borealis, and it was seen down as far as the Caribbean that night. The Earth's magnetic field is weakening, and this is one of the things that happens. And in relation to how the Grand Canyon occurred, the Earth doesn't really turn over on its side in a literal sense. The magma beneath us becomes so hot that it's like the skin of an orange, and it becomes lubricated and it can slip. And when it slips, things rip apart at places. And the Grand Canyon is evidence of one of those. But these terrific rips are all over the place. You can find them in many places in the world. So that's
you can also
that's
find them on
my
Mars,
view on this.
and Valles Marineris on Mars. That's an extreme example.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
Yeah. Wonder what artifacts are in that canyon. Probably more than and all the canyons on Earth, seeing how big it is. But anyhow, I'm digressing a bit. I do need to attend another video call session that I signed up for at 8 p.m. Eastern. So we've gone a little over an hour now. I'd like to give you the opportunity to get into. Thank you, by the way, for getting into some of the healing stuff, the metaphysical healing stuff, and realizing God is within you, and that's the key to healing. So that was very important. Really want to get into that. I'm glad you did. But this interesting site here, deaf, that's DEAF, like a blind, deaf, and dumb, cloaking.works. If this is some sort of a product here, well, apparently it is 120 yearly per device. I'll give you the opportunity now to make some sort of a sales pitch out of this before we close out the show. And then after you make this little pitch here regarding what that is, why don't you get out anything else you'd like to get out, and then we'll call the show. And I'll need to plug my headphones in to make sure that they have full battery power for that thing at 8. But anyhow, let's close out here. Great interview. Thank you for getting into some topics, by the way. I didn't even have to ask you about. You just went into it. I'm glad you did. But anyhow, this sales pitch here, Deaf Cloaking, what's that all about?
Deaf cloaking is a system that resides on the backbone of the internet. It is a security system. And once your number is put in, most people don't realize, but all communications go over the internet. The application does not go on your phone. It is on the backbone of the internet. Once your number is plugged into that, then you're protected. If anyone tries to intercept your call or your text or anything you're doing, the connection is immediately broken within a microsecond. A lot of folks who have deaf, if they're being listened to, they realize they have dropped calls more frequently. I've had that happen a few times talking to folks in China and Taiwan. Someone tries to listen in, it just disconnects you over and over and over again until they finally decide, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to listen, so to hell with it. $120 a year is $10 a month. And you can put it on your computer. You just need to know your IP address for your computer or your tablet, whatever you want to protect. Some people use Skype for making phone calls. I guess that's going to be going by the wayside. But a lot of people use their computer for communications, and this protects anyone from having prying eyes or linking in and being able to hear your conversations. And on your phone, I mean, the way things are today, that's really a no-brainer to want something like this. There's no app on your phone. There's nothing for you to remember to turn on. Nothing. It just works.
Mm-hmm. I was actually not on mute that whole time, but anyway, thank you. It just works. Glad to hear that. So thank you very much. I guess we'll call it a show here. I'm glad you recorded this for me. I've never used this program before, but apparently I'll have to because Skype's gone by the wayside. I'll use something else. Only 45 minutes I got on Zoom available at the moment, so this may actually work out well. Got a lot of learning to do. I love the background there that you got there of the spaceship, but it's on the beach with Saturn floating in the water. Excellent, excellent image there. So thank you very much. Send this to me as soon as you can. I actually have another interview tomorrow, but since you did your interview first, I promise to upload yours before I upload the interview I do tomorrow. I just need you to get it to me as soon as possible so that I can get it there and not leave the host the guest, I'm going to be interviewing tomorrow waiting. So thank you very much. Take care. By the way, anything you want to get out, anything at all?
No, I mean, if folks are interested to see anything, jerrywillshow.com. We have a show like yours. There's hundreds of shows, been doing about 10 years or more. The Healing website is jerrywills.com. A lot of reference information there as well. And just, drop by, say hello. I'm on X. I'm on Facebook. So be nice to hear from anyone that's interested.
Awesome. Take care. Best of luck to you. And I've never actually turned this off. Do I just press? Oh, okay. Leave meeting, the little red X button. That's how you close here. Huh? Learn something new every day. Take care. Namaste. Best of luck to you. And I hope to see you on Gaia TV and other programs. Good luck. Take care.
Thanks for having me on, Andrew.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.